Today's case, I'm going to start out with a short case. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this woman, but I just will read from what I was able to find about her. Catherine B. McMillian. She's been missing since November the 4th, 1985 from Seneca Rocks, West Virginia. She was 58 years old when she went missing, 5 foot 5 inches tall, 117 pounds. She was biracial, African American and Caucasian, with brown hair and brown eyes. In November 1985, there was a flood, and Catherine climbed onto the roof of a flood-ravaged house trailer to escape the rising water. She was able to cling to a tree using her belt for some time before falling from the tree and into the swollen streams. Her body was swept away, and she's believed to have drowned, but her body was never found. So that was just something I wanted to talk about. She probably did drown during this, but no one's ever been able to find her body, and she is still a missing person. Now, the next case is from Kentucky. Teresa Reeves. This is the story of a woman who went missing in Carter County, Kentucky, in the Grayson area. She was last seen at Bezos Sports Bar in Grayson, Kentucky. She was last seen on February the 13th, 2026, so just less than a month ago. Her name is Tessa Reeves, but she also goes by Tessa Pelfrey. She's described as having brown hair. She's about 4 foot 10 and weighs about 100 pounds. She wears eyeglasses most of the time, and she has brown eyes. Her family says this is not like her to just up and take off. I was told that she walked out of the bar, leaving behind her phone, her purse, and her money. Her son says this doesn't add up. She would not just walked out of the bar, leaving behind her phone and her purse. So they just want some information if anyone happened to be in that bar that night. Bezos Sports Bar on 111 South Horde Street, Grayson, Kentucky. This is in Carter County. If anyone has any information, if they saw her that night or if they've seen her since, if they saw her with anyone, if this bar probably had outdoor cameras to see if she went to a car with someone or if she walked away. So there's a phone number here, 606-202-1772. And if you have any information on her, please call this number. Now, this was posted March 11th, so about 4 days ago. Kentucky State Police asked for help to find the missing woman named Tessa Reeves from Carter County, Kentucky. Tessa Reeves, age 50, was last seen Valentine's Day, February the 14th, 2026, in Grayson. As of today, she's been missing for a month, and none of her family, no one has heard from her. Her family says this is not like her at all to just up and take off. This was one of those stories that had very little information, very few details, other than she was last seen at this bar on Friday the 13th of this year, 2026. It was reported by someone that she just got up and walked out the door, leaving behind all of her belongings, including her phone. So I would say, well, maybe she went outside to smoke or to use the phone, but she'd left everything behind. The only links that I could find to her story were on Facebook. I could find nothing on Google. I searched for her on any missing persons in Kentucky pages, and I just could not come up with anything. So if anyone has any information about this woman, please call 606-202-1772. You can also contact the Kentucky State Police or the Carter County Sheriff's Department. Now today I'm going to feature a case about a woman from Tennessee. Now her name was Reba Catlett. Now today I'm going to talk about a story about a woman who was in Sevierville County, Tennessee. This is from Tennessee Missing and Unsolved. Reba Catlett was on her way to the Sevierville County Courthouse when she last talked to her daughter on June 15, 1992. The following day, her vehicle was found in front of Big Lots in Sevierville. She was never seen or heard from again. Reba was a 58-year-old homemaker and a real estate investor. She was described as 5'2" and weighed about 200 pounds. She had graying hair, blue eyes. Now, following her disappearance, her money was left in the bank, and all of her personal items were found inside of her home. So she hadn't just walked away to start a new life. Her family says she wouldn't have done that anyway. She wouldn't have just walked off and not told anyone. And she definitely would not have done that without any money. I did find a little bit more about Reba on WBIR. What happened to Reba? She vanished without a trace in June of 1992. Authorities believe she was murdered, and they're asking for the public's help to solve her case. Before they leave this world, the siblings of Reba Catlett would love to know what happened to her. What really happened to her, they say, putting that in parentheses. They put no stock in the idea that the homemaker and real estate investor just decided to up and leave. Everything she had was left behind, and people knew that she had left her husband Darrell before, that they'd had some problems, and the family says themselves she might have left him, but she wouldn't have left. She might have left her marriage, but she wouldn't have left. She wouldn't have abandoned her family without a word. They believe that someone murdered Reba on June 15, 1992. That's what her siblings think happened to her, because there's been absolutely no trace of her found. Now, some details about Reba. I'm going to read this. If someone murdered Reba on June 15th, 1992, and that's what her family believes happened, it's baffling that absolutely no trace of her has ever been found. No blood, no fingerprints, no tracks. Now, it was said that she had last spoken to her daughter at 8 a.m. that morning. She told her daughter that she was going to the courthouse in Sevierville County, Tennessee. There's many reasons why people visit a courthouse. But could it also have been that she was going there to file a grievance against somebody? Maybe a restraining order. Maybe she was having problems with somebody. Now I'm going to read this part, and this kind of adds to the possibilities. The only solid clue to her whereabouts is that her 1980s model Cadillac was left abandoned, unlocked, and empty in the parking lot of a Big Lots store in Sevierville, Tennessee. When Reba vanished, her brothers and sisters put together a collection of $5,000 for a reward, but nobody ever claimed it. As the years passed and there was no sign or trail of their sister, they decided to put together a headstone, and they had it placed in the Jones Cove Cemetery. It has the day of her birth and the last day that anyone ever saw her alive. She had a family of 8 siblings. They all got together and they spoke with the local news media. hoping that someone might come forward and they might be able to catch a break in this case. They say they hope that someone out there will see this and have compassion. Now, of course, when anyone goes missing, the first person that's ever investigated is the spouse, the partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, or ex-spouse, or business partners. That's usually the first circle of people that the police will talk to and work out from there. So they knew that she'd had some troubles with her husband in the past. Now, a little bit about the marriage. It's fair to say that they sometimes had a difficult marriage. She had left him at least twice during the 37 years that they were married. Her sister said that he could be mean and abusive to her. Together, they had 3 children. Now, they had a son who died prematurely in 1955. They had a daughter in 1956, and in 1960 they had a son, and their son had some physical problems that caused him to have seizures. Now, he died in 1985. The Catletts lived their entire life in Sevier County, Tennessee. Now, for people who are familiar with Tennessee and East Tennessee, they know that Sevier County, Sevierville area is the Great Smoky Mountains. It's right on the outskirts of Dollywood. It's Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, all these towns. Now, these that probably don't has anything to do with any of that, but here's the reason that I bring that up. Reba was described as a homemaker, and her husband was a cattle farmer, and he worked at a textile mill. Now, together, they built a respectable portfolio of real estate, owning up to 900 acres. But Reba had rental properties on a lot of these acres of land, and Reba collected the rent on these properties. And managing the real estate gave her a sense of importance and pride. It made her feel like she was in the business world. They bought this property. They would have the properties either already had rentals on them, whether it was business rentals or homes. And Reba was in charge of managing all that. Her husband worked, and she took care of the money that came from the real estate. Now, there's another possibility. Did someone owe back rent? Was that one of the reasons why she was going to the courthouse? Was she going to file some eviction charge or, overdue notice against one of her tenants? Did someone in that, possibility have something to do with Reba's disappearance? Now, like I said, for the people familiar with this part of Tennessee, they know how much this property probably would have been worth in today's market. 900 acres near Gatlinburg, near Dollywood, would have been worth a lot of money. And not just that, but in 1992, it was shown that the holdings of their properties and their real estate investments valued $3 million. Their assets included waterfront acreage in Jefferson County on Douglas Lake. Now, like I say, if you're familiar with any part of this part of Tennessee, you know that this was sought after land. Douglas Lake being one of the, tourist attractions of East Tennessee. And people who are lucky enough to be able to afford to buy a spot of land there, the place is surrounded by the Smoky Mountains. It's close to Knoxville. And it's just, it's an area of Tennessee that is worth a lot of money. So were they in talks to sell some of this land? Were they trying to develop? Or, did it have something to do with this? Did her disappearance have something to do with her having some problem with someone to do with this property, real estate, money, or was it something closer to home? Now, it was said that they had a nice ranch house on Foxwood Drive, which is just outside of Sevierville, downtown Sevierville. Now, court records also show that this couple lived basically separate lives. He worked the graveyard shift at this textile mill, and he lived in the downstairs part of the home, and she had the upstairs part of the home. Um, in my own personal opinion, I'll throw that in. I believe that they just decided it was probably cheaper to stay together than to go through the divorce and divide up this property, hire lawyers, and he gets this and she gets that, and it was probably just easier for them to do things this way. When they did see each other, they would usually just have meals together before he would leave for work, or when he would come home late at night, they might share a meal together. Now, Reba Catlett was her husband, and he said, "We never took vacations together. We both worked all the time." He gave a deposition in July of 2000 after she'd been missing for 8 years. He describes her as someone who was very thrifty. He said she never went to the beauty salon. She did her own hair at home. She usually went to yard sales with her daughter, and they didn't do a lot of shopping, traveling, even though they had the money to do so. She was very thrifty. Her daughter says that she would take her and they would go clothing shopping at yard sales or thrift stores. She was a very inexpensive person. She was very quiet and she stayed to herself, says her daughter. She enjoyed her private life. She had a daughter and she had grandchildren. Now, Reba, it said, told her husband on June 14, 1992, that she would be heading to the Dandridge courthouse the next day to check on some tax records. He says they talked before he went to work that night. According to him, he never spoke to her again. The lawyers in this deposition asked, "Did you notice anything unusual when you were speaking to her?" And he said, "I never noticed anything out of place, anything out of character." She just said her plans for the next day was to go to Dandridge to the courthouse to take care of some tax records. Now, her daughter Deborah recalls having a similar conversation with her mother the following morning. She says they talked on the phone and Reba was telling her that she was getting ready to leave. She said, "I spoke to my mother every day, daily." Investigators would later hear that Reba told someone she needed to stop by Big Lots to pick up some cleaning supplies. When he got off work on the morning of June 15th, 1992, Reba Catlett said he went straight home and went straight to bed in his downstairs bedroom. A few hours later, he said he got up and got dressed, and he had to attend a meeting at his job. So he goes to this meeting. He comes back home, and when he lays back down, goes back to sleep because he had to get up and go to work later that evening. When he woke up later that night to get ready to go to work, he said Reba wasn't at home. He says he called his daughter, and he also called Reba's sister, Mary. Now, the sister says he called me and he told me she's missing. And I said, "Well, we'll find her." Now, that would be a strange thing for a man to just call his sister-in-law up and say, "My wife is missing," knowing that she was out taking care of some properties and taxes and business. He probably, normally, a person would say, "Have you talked to her today? I'm here at home and I wake up to get ready for work and she's not home." And He probably just called the daughter, called the sister to say, have you all talked to her today? You know, and then maybe he would have went out and got in his truck or went out and drove around to see if he could spot her anywhere. But it is somewhat strange that he just says she's missing. The next day, her husband reported her missing to the police. Now, evidence shows that the Big Lots in downtown Sevierville was significant to Reba's disappearance. That's where her four-door Cadillac was parked. They searched the Cadillac and they found nothing out of the ordinary. No, blood, tires, or anything to show that there had been a struggle. But her sister says, I knew there was something strange about the car. For one thing, it was unlocked. Also, after it was found, police asked to drive it back to the Catlett home. They asked her to drive the car back to her sister's home. She says when she got inside of the car that the seat was pushed way back. And she says my sister would not have had the seat pushed that far back because she wouldn't have been able to reach the pedal. They were basically the same height. And she says she knew that her sister wouldn't have had the car pushed that far back. So this led everyone to believe that she did not drive the car there herself. Eventually, the car ended up in the police custody. They processed it, but they yielded no clues. Police believe that someone had wiped the car down. Now, her husband Darrell and her daughter Deborah said police searched their home and they found nothing out of the ordinary. The bank accounts were undisturbed. Nothing had been taken from the bank. Some people believe that Reba was buried somewhere on the property, and some people believe that she was murdered by him, but it would have had to have taken place sometime after 8 a.m. when she spoke with her daughter and told her daughter, I'm getting ready to leave. Unfortunately, police were not allowed on the property where it was said that she might have been buried. Now, in today's world, they would use drones to fly over the property to check to see if there was any pieces of property that looked to be disturbed, fresh dug graves, or anything like that. Eventually, authorities would search the couple's property that they owned on the Douglas Lake area, and they found no evidence of her there either. 4 months after he last spoke to his wife, Reba Catlett filed for a divorce. Records show by the end of 1992, he retired from his job at the mill. He said, I just had to go on with my life. I thought maybe she really did just run off. Maybe this whole time she had been putting some money aside. And he believed, he told police, at least, and family members that this is what he believed, that she had just gone off and left and that he had to get on with his life. So he filed for a divorce. I mean, she wasn't going to come back, I didn't believe. I believe that if police believed she was dead, and they were telling me that they believed that she was dead, she had plenty of time to call me. She had plenty of time to reach out to someone in her family to say, I've just got tired of this life and left. So at this point, he files for divorce. He gets on with his life. The court granted his motion for divorce. He remarried, and he and his daughter split up Reba's assets. So whatever properties would have gone to his wife if they had been, when they did divorce, which, the divorce was granted on his side. So whatever properties and money would have been hers went to her daughter. And she filed the paperwork not long after this to have her mother declared dead. The court made it official in October of 2000 that they declared her legally dead. Now, Reba Catlett died in March of 2007. In his obituary, there was no mention of his first wife, Reba. When Deborah Catlett's son Aaron Chambers died in a motorcycle accident in July of 2023, there was no mention of Reba, his grandmother, in his obituary. Reba's sisters always suspected that Darrell was involved in her death. The fact that he filed for a divorce 4 months after she disappeared says it was very interesting, to say the least. Now, the agent who was in charge of investigating Reba's disappearance says that she believes that she has a theory about what happened to Reba, but she wouldn't go into any details about this. She also said that she believes there was potential that there was more than one person involved, and that person out there, even though Darrell Catlett has now died, that she believes there is one person out there who does know the truth, and maybe even more than one person. So maybe it's possible that she believes that Darrell Catlett hired someone to kill his wife, gave them her agenda for the day. She's leaving at this time. She will be in this car. She will be going toward Dandridge. Maybe he disengaged her car in some way and it broke down, and they came along pretending to be good Samaritans to help her, killed her, disposed of her body, drove the car back to Sevierville and parked it. That's a theory. That's just a theory. But it would make sense that he might have hired someone to help him to cover up this crime. He could have murdered her right there at home that morning after she got off the phone with her daughter. It's possible that he did have her body removed from the home and taken to one of these properties that they owned, and she could very well be buried there today. Now, the family says, we just want to know what happened to her. We know they're both gone, meaning Reba and Darrell, now that Darrell is gone. Could it be possible that she finally just said, I'm going to leave this marriage. I'm finished with this marriage. She was going to divorce. Maybe she told him she was going to the courthouse to check on tax records, and maybe he had hidden something and he didn't want her to find it out. And maybe this led to an argument. Or maybe she returned home that day after finding something out and they got into an argument. Either way, was Reba Catlett ever seen at the courthouse that day? Did anyone at the Dandridge courthouse or Sevierville courthouse ever say they saw her there? Did anyone speak to her after that 8 a.m. phone call that she had with her daughter? I think most people probably do believe that Reba was killed probably by her spouse. It would make the most sense. So I really just have to wrap this story up by saying there's been nothing since 1992. There was the police who investigated this. They had their theories. I think that the investigator really believed the husband was involved and that it was probably a murder for hire, or at the very least it was a cover-up, that he had hired someone to help him to dispose and cover up this crime. Even though no charges against this man were ever filed, and he lived 25 years after his wife disappeared and was legally divorced from him, legally declared dead, and no charges against him were ever filed. So the family just had to kind of live with that dark cloud hanging over their head. They only had the one surviving daughter. I don't know how she and her father got along after this took place. I'll just wrap this up by saying that Reba Catlett disappeared June 15th, 1992 in Sevier County, Tennessee. She was 58 years old at the time. She would be 92 years old if she were alive today, and I don't believe that she is. She doesn't sound like the kind of woman who, even if she had money hidden away, I don't believe she would have just walked away and left this life with her daughter, her grandchildren, these properties that she probably would have gotten at least half of the assets. She might have gotten some of the properties. She could have continued to earn an income renting these properties out. People who knew Reba said that she would not have left her family. And if anyone has any information, they can contact the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation at 1-800-824-3463. Thanks for watching.